There's a wound so old, so deep, so completely woven into who you are that most people never even recognize it as a wound. They just call it personality. They say, "I've always been this way." They say, "I'm just someone who feels everything." They say, "I'm naturally a caretaker." But here's what I need you to hear right now. If you are an empath, if you absorb other people's emotions, if you shrink yourself to keep the peace, if you feel an almost unbearable pull toward people who need saving, there is a very high chance that everything starts here, with the mother wound. Not because your mother was a monster, not because your childhood was obviously traumatic, but because something essential, something you needed at the most vulnerable moment of your psychological development was just slightly, quietly, consistently off. And your entire nervous system reorganized itself around that gap. Stay with me, because what I'm about to walk you through completely reframes the way empaths understand themselves. Carl Jung called the mother the first carrier of what he named the anima mundi, the world soul. Your mother, or primary caregiver, was literally your first experience of the world itself. She wasn't just a person to you, she was reality. Her emotional attunement, or lack of it, became your template for what relationships feel like, what love feels like, what you feel like inside your own body. This is not metaphor. This is developmental psychology backed by decades of attachment research. When that first relationship carries anxiety, emotional unavailability, enmeshment, or unpredictability, the child's nervous system doesn't just feel scared, it adapts. And for the child who becomes an empath, that adaptation is particularly profound. Here's what actually happens. When a mother is emotionally unpredictable, sometimes warm, sometimes withdrawn, sometimes needing the child to regulate her emotions, the child learns something devastating. They learn that love is conditional. They learn that their emotional needs are too much, too loud, too inconvenient. And so they do the only thing a child can do. They stop tracking their own inner world, and they start tracking hers, constantly reading the room, monitoring micro-expressions, anticipating moods before they arrive. Sound familiar? That hypervigilance, that extraordinary sensitivity to other people's emotional states, it didn't come from nowhere. It came from survival. Jung described the mother complex as one of the most powerful forces in the unconscious. Not the actual mother herself, but the imprint she left. The psychological mother that lives inside you, shaping every relationship you enter. For empaths, this complex often takes one of three distinct forms. The first is the engulfing mother, the mother who was emotionally enmeshed, who made her child responsible for her happiness, who loved so intensely that the child had no room to develop a separate self. If this was your experience, you grew up confused about where you end and other people begin. Boundaries feel almost physically impossible, because in your earliest template, having a self, a separate, distinct, sometimes disagreeing self, felt like abandonment. The second form is the absent mother, not necessarily physically absent, but emotionally unavailable. Depressed, distracted, overwhelmed, or simply not wired for deep emotional attunement. If this was your experience, you became extraordinarily skilled at sensing need in others, because you spent your entire childhood hoping someone would finally see yours. You became the person who fills emotional gaps, in friendships, in romantic relationships, in workplaces, because filling gaps is what you learned to do first with her. And the third form is the wounded healer origin, the mother who was herself deeply wounded, who needed her child to witness her pain, carry her grief, hold her together. This is the origin story of so many empaths who find themselves in relationships with narcissists. This is crazy. You spent years wondering why you keep attracting people who consume you. And the answer was always here. You were trained from the very beginning to make wounded people feel seen. You were trained to disappear into someone else's emotional world. You were trained that love looks like sacrifice. Now here's where Jung's framework becomes genuinely transformative, because he didn't stop at identifying the wound. He pointed directly toward integration. Jung said that the mother complex, left unconscious, runs your life from the shadows. It chooses your partners for you. It decides how much you're allowed to want. It determines whether you believe your needs deserve space in the world. But brought into consciousness, examined, named, understood, it becomes something extraordinary. It becomes the source of your deepest empathic gifts. Here's what shadow work on the mother wound actually looks like in practice. The first thing is the hardest. You have to be willing to stop idealizing your mother, or stop pathologizing her. Both extremes keep the complex unconscious. Jung was very clear. Integration requires neither blame nor worship. It requires seeing clearly. Ask yourself this question and really sit with it. What emotion was I never allowed to have around my mother? Anger? Neediness? Disappointment? Whatever that answer is, that is your shadow material. That is the feeling you learn to bury so deep that you can't even access it in yourself anymore. But you recognize it instantly in others. And here's the painful irony that Jung identified. The emotions you suppressed in yourself are exactly the emotions you absorb most intensely from other people. Your shadow doesn't disappear, it just gets projected outward. And then you pick it up from everyone around you and call it empathy. This is why shadow work isn't optional for empaths. It's the mechanism. Without it, your sensitivity stays a wound dressed up as a gift. With it, it becomes genuine wisdom. The second piece of mother wound integration is what Jung called differentiation. You have to psychologically separate from the internal mother, the one that lives in your unconscious, not the actual woman. This means noticing when you're making decisions from her voice, not your own. It means recognizing the difference between your genuine care for others and the compulsive caretaking that comes from an old nervous system pattern. Genuine care feels like a choice. Compulsive caretaking feels like dread when you don't do it. That distinction alone will change how you understand yourself. And the third piece, the one Jung considered the most vital, is grief. Real, honest grief for what you needed and didn't receive. Not dramatic, not performative, just quiet, witnessed acknowledgement that a child needed something essential and the environment couldn't provide it. That grief is not weakness. That grief is the threshold between the wounded empath and the conscious one. Because as long as you're still performing strength, you don't feel. Still compulsively caring for everyone except yourself, still waiting for someone else to finally give you what you needed, then you're still a child at the door. Grief closes that door. And on the other side of it is something Jung called individuation. The gradual, sometimes painful, ultimately extraordinary process of becoming who you actually are, not who you had to be to survive. For empaths, that journey almost always passes through the mother wound, not to punish your mother, not to punish yourself, but to reclaim the parts of you that went underground so that relationship could survive. Your sensitivity is real. Your capacity to feel what others miss is real, but it deserves to be yours, not a survival mechanism running on autopilot from a wound you never named. If something in this video landed, if you recognized yourself in the engulfing mother pattern, or the emotional absence, or the wounded healer origin, I want you to know something. You are not broken. You are not too sensitive. You are someone who adapted brilliantly to a difficult situation.
And now you get to choose something different. The next video I'd point you toward is the one on the narcissist-empath dynamic, because the mother wound is almost always the psychological root of that pattern. Everything connects. That's the work. If this channel is the kind of depth you've been looking for, subscribe and turn on notifications. New videos here every single day. And if you're somewhere in the middle of this work right now, leave me a comment. Tell me which pattern resonated most. I read every single one.